Hey everybody, it's your old pal Wood Doofus here, coming to you from the backyard today instead of the garage. Still a nice fall day out here and I'm enjoying the weather, and so I've decided to do some reconfiguring of my deck here. We moved into this house a few months ago and the deck just really isn't built very well. Unfortunately, it's well enough to work, but not well enough to pass any kind of safety codes. So over the next few years, I'm gonna tear the whole thing down and replace it basically, but I can't afford the time or money to do that all at once, so I'm starting one segment at a time. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to catch you up on what I've done so far, which is just a little bit of prep work, and then we're gonna do the concrete footings and we're gonna do the beams for this video. So stay tuned and here we go. The only way up and down from the deck is the stairs on this side of the deck. And I wanted to, among other things, fix that problem. So what I've done so far is over here on the other side of the deck, I've cut out an 8x8 section, and I'm gonna take the rim out eventually once I move this support over here. And then I can take the rim out, and then I'm going to lower the platform down. And I have a few reasons that I need to lower that platform. The main reason, on top of having just another way down to the yard, is to build a platform for this hot tub that we purchased secondhand not too long ago. I don't want to have the hot tub way up high on this thing. I want to have it lower to the ground. So I'll hit two birds with one stone by lowering the platform down and extending it out into the side yard a little bit. So you can see I've already dug out and formed 4 footings out of concrete. I did that last week to get started, but I have bigger plans to extend the deck over on the side yard. So yesterday I was able to dig several more holes, and I put extra footings where the hot tub is going to go to support the extra weight. So when I measured where these footings would go, I just kind of eyeballed it to keep it as square as I could, just visually. To me, the joists are the more important things to be perfectly square, and the beams can be a little bit off square if your eyeball is wrong. So when you're digging these footings, it's important to check with your local building code to make sure you know how deep they have to go. It all depends on your climate and how cold it gets in the wintertime. You want to dig a certain depth below the frost line. I say a minimum in any part of the country is 12 to 16 inches below the topsoil, but sometimes you might have to do 2 feet, sometimes you might have to do 4 feet, just depends. So don't take my word for it, go and figure that out for yourself. I found that using this kind of shovel is the best way to dig a hole this size. I guess you can use a post hole digger too, but that's more for smaller holes. This worked out really well for this size hole. So the next step I have to do now is put the cardboard tubes in these holes and make sure that the tops are all level with each other. Now with the first 4, I started with the top left corner, and then I leveled this one over here, and I leveled that one to that one, and then I leveled the 4th one, and it all worked out pretty well. So now that I have a reference for my level, I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I'm gonna level the rest of these. And once the cardboard is in the hole, then we can start filling the concrete. So as you can see, I have my reference point, what I needed to be leveled to, and I just got one of the old joists that I took out of the deck when I demoed part of it to use as my straight edge. It's relatively straight, it's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And I got my 4-foot level on here. So all I need to do, now that I got my tube in the next hole, is to lift that up until it gets level. And once it's level, I'm going to mark underneath here to know where the line needs to be. And then I just need to match that line all the way around. So now that I have my reference line here, what should be level with the rest, I'm going to use my little T-square to try and mark all the way around. So we're looking at 20, 25 and a quarter. So if I just mark 25 and a quarter in various places, so now I just connect the lines And you'd be surprised how easy it is to get disoriented on what's the same length because of these spiral wraps in the cardboard. So it really helps when you're ready to cut to have this line. Cut it, I just like to use a little hand saw of some kind. To me, it's safer and more accurate than trying to use any kind of power tool on something so awkward to hold on to. All right, so now that we got this cut, we can put it back in the hole and check for level. Doesn't look great. Let's see. Let's get up higher. All right, so with just a little bit of backfilling, just like a couple scoops and tamping it down, I was able to get it right back to level. So this one is set, ready for concrete. Let's go ahead and set some more, and we'll go from there. When you need a lot of concrete for a project, it's better to buy it by the pallet, then you get it cheaper per bag. So 42 bags of this comes on a pallet, so I went ahead and bought 42, which was cheaper than the 35 that I needed. Plus, you can use that money that you saved to have it delivered from the home store, which I did because this is a lot of weight. I don't have a vehicle that can do that. I'm using an 80-pound bag of 4,000 PSI. You want the high strength concrete for a project like this. A lot of people recommend 5,000 PSI, but this is readily available, so I think 4,000 PSI will be all right. There's a plane landing over there. It says right on the bag to use 3.5 quarts of water with this bag, so I use one of these buckets, and I discovered that 3.5 quarts goes right to the bottom of this box with the no baby drowning thing. So this line at the bottom is where I fill it to. Oops, right here. This line right here is where I fill it to. And that does pretty good, give or take. It's not a perfect system, but it gets you close. All right, so I think this might be the right consistency. I always think about this as making pancakes. You don't want it too watery and you don't want it too thick. You want it just right, and that should be good. I think the reason, see, I have a big chunk right here because the bags were left out in the rain. I thought I had them covered, but they weren't perfectly covered. So I think some of the bags got some chunks, and I'll try to get those out and put them on the very bottom. But that's why I assume the water mixture didn't work the first time. So I added a little bit more, got the consistency that I'm looking for. Now it's time to pour it. All right, so this tube's coming out of the ground pretty far, so my guess it's gonna take at least 3 bags, probably 4 bags to fill this thing. So let's go ahead and put 1 bag in. All right, we got 1 down for today and 9 more to go. All right, so it's been a couple weeks since the last time I was filming, and as you can see, we got all the concrete set here. You actually do need to wait at least 3 days before you can start drilling into the concrete, because it needs at least that much time to cure. To fully cure the concrete, it's gonna need like almost a month. So you can build on it before a month, but it's not going to be fully ready to accept all the weight you want to put on it until about 28 days. So you can see I started to put some of these beams on, but I'm going to walk you through how I did that. Also, I will be removing this cardboard eventually. I just haven't got around to it yet. I'm working on these last 2 beams right here. I've already set them down as kind of a dry fit, and I measured to make sure they are parallel. So I measured at 2 points to make sure they're roughly the same distance apart, and that's to make sure that when I'm done laying them, I could square them up. Once I got these brackets into position, I went ahead and marked a corner so that I could reference that when I'm drilling the hole in the center later on. For hardware, I'm using these 6x6 posts here, and these are made to accept the post in both directions. I'm going to put them down lengthwise on there for this application. And for the fasteners, I decided to use a 6-inch length, 1/2-inch diameter wedge anchor, and they come with the nuts and the washers to go with them. And these are good because once you hammer them in there, they're not going to come out, and that's going to resist the uplift load with for the deck. There's 3 kinds of material you can get these fasteners in. The first is zinc plated, which is mostly for indoor use. You see them a lot. These are hot dip galvanized, which are corrosion resistant and good for making contact with this treated lumber. And the third would be stainless steel, which is more corrosion resistant, but also more expensive than the hot dip galvanized. So I go with the middle of the road idea, and I think most people do too. You're gonna need a hammer drill in order to drill in the concrete. This is one of the cheapest hammer drills you can buy. It costs about $60. Since I have a 1/2-inch diameter wedge anchor, I have a 1/2-inch diameter concrete masonry bit here, and this is 12 inches long to make sure I have plenty of space. I marked it with tape, obviously, at about 6 inches, so I can make sure I hammer it as far as I need to into the concrete. It's better to err on the side of a little bit too deep than not deep enough, because you don't want the anchor to be sticking out too far and interfere with laying the beam on there. So I make sure to position my bracket on my marking here so that I know a good place to start the hole. And once it's started, I can go ahead and move the bracket out of the way. You're gonna get a lot of concrete dust, which makes it important to be working in a dry environment, and you want to work that concrete dust out as you go, otherwise it's going to interfere and wear out your drill. For some reason the drill bit likes to come out sometimes. So the bolt has this tip on here, and it's kind of a sacrificial tip, so you can whack it with a hammer without damaging the threads. But you do want to keep the nut kind of close to the top of the threads, and that's to protect the threads from getting damaged. But you also want to make sure you don't hit the nut with the hammer, because then you'll damage the threads, and then it becomes really difficult to tighten it down when you need to. I got the washer on and the nut on, and I put the bracket over the hole, and I positioned it on the markings that I made earlier, so now I'm ready to hammer it in. Get it down to about that where the nut is and tap it good, and then you're ready to tighten it. Make sure it's not interfering with the depth there. So this bracket will do a good job now of keeping the beam off of the concrete to resist any kind of rot and double the lifespan of the beam itself. All right, so now I just put the beam in place. Now I need to check for square. All right, so the way I check for general square is just to measure the diagonals and see how close they are to being the same. So right now I'm 107 7/8 on that side. And over here, I'm way different. I have 101 7/8. So that's telling me that this one needs to go that way a couple inches. It's got my little sledgehammer. All right, measure again. I got 106 1/4. Got an airplane flying overhead. And I got 103, so it looks like I need another 1.5 inches. All right, 104 7/8. Yeah, 104 1/2, so maybe I'll tap it back just a little bit, but it's pretty close. Now that the beams are in position and everything's checked for level, I can go ahead and fasten the beams to the post with these 1.5 inch galvanized nails. Make sure you get the right kind of nails for this. They have to be, it helps if you get the ones that match up with the manufacturer of these brackets themselves, and then you know you're getting the right thing. But they do kind of overcharge for stuff like that. But yeah, just make sure they're 1.5 inch galvanized. And it might be 2 inches, I don't really know. Yeah, I just measured it, it's 1.5 inches. All right, so that's about it for the beams and the footings. Like I said, I'm gonna take the cardboard off. I'm gonna backfill any gaps there are around the cement. But the next video is gonna be joists, so stay tuned for that. And as always, don't be afraid to be a doofus.